Today's story from Beatrix Potter is The Tale of Mrs. Tiggy Winkle. And Mrs. Tiggy Winkle is the cutest little hedgehog you ever saw. She's just a roly-poly, cute little gal. And because this story was written a long time ago, there's talk in it about pocket handkerchiefs or handkerchiefs. And back in the olden days, they didn't have boxes of Kleenex. So you had cloth handkerchiefs and you carried them in case you needed to blow your nose or sneeze or something like that. You had a pocket handkerchief. And then what they would do is they would wash them and use them again. So anyway, here's the story. Once upon a time, there was a little girl called Lucy who lived at a farm called Littletown. She was a good little girl, only she was always losing her pocket handkerchiefs. One day little Lucy came into the farmyard crying, and oh, she did cry so. I've lost my pocket handkin, 3 handkins, and a penny. Have you seen them, Tabby kitten? The kitten went on washing her white paws, so Lucy asked a speckled hen, Sally Henny Penny, have you found 3 pocket handkins? But the speckled hen ran into a barn clucking. I go barefoot, barefoot. Then Lucy asked Cock Robin, sitting on a twig. Cock Robin looked sideways at Lucy with his bright black eye, and he flew over a stile and away. Lucy climbed upon the stile. A stile is a little stepping stair that goes over a fence, like a little ladder fence that would go over like a little bridge. People use it to climb over a fence, but like a cow and stuff can't use it, so they would stay pinned up. Lucy climbed upon the stile and looked up at the hill behind Littletown, a hill that goes up into the clouds as though it had no top. Must be a very tall hill. And a great way up the hillside, she thought she saw some white things spread out upon the grass. Well, most of the time the handkerchiefs were white, just plain white. So she maybe thinks she sees her handkerchiefs laying in the field. Here's Lucy asking the kitty cat, who didn't answer her. And there she is talking to the chicken, but the chicken didn't answer. And there she is climbing up the stile over the fence to look at the pasture out beyond. Lucy scrambled up the hill as fast as her stout legs would carry her. She ran along a steep path way up and up until Littletown was right away down below. She could have dropped a pebble down the chimney. Presently she came to a spring bubbling out from the hillside. Someone had stood a tin can upon the stone to catch the water, but the water was already running over, for the can was no bigger than an egg cup, and where the sand upon the path was wet, there were footmarks of a very small person. Lucy ran on and on. The path ended under a big rock. The grass was short and green, and there were clothes props cut from bracken stems with lines of plaited rushes and a heap of tiny clothespins, but no pocket handkerchiefs. So it's like she's found a miniature clothesline. But there was something else, a door straight into the hill, and inside it someone was singing. Lily white and clean, oh, with little frills between, oh, smooth and hot, red rusty spot, never here be seen, oh. So there she is climbing way up above town, and now she's found the little path, and there's the water filling the little cup. Lucy knocked once, twice, and interrupted the song. A little frightened voice called out, "Who's that?" Lucy opened the door, and what do you think there was inside the hill? A nice clean kitchen with a flagged floor and wooden beams, just like any farm kitchen. Only the ceiling was so low that Lucy's head nearly touched it, and the pots and pans were small, and so was everything else there. There was a nice hot singy smell, and at the table, with an iron in her hand, stood a very stout short person staring anxiously at Lucy. Her print gown was tucked up, and she was wearing a large apron over her striped petticoat. Her little black nose went sniffle, 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 and her eyes went twinkle, twinkle, twinkle. And underneath her cap, where Lucy had yellow curls, that little person had prickles. So there's Lucy walking into the small house, and there's what she saw. "Who are you?" said Lucy. "Have you seen my pocket handpins?" The little person made a bob curtsy. "Oh, yes, if you please, ma'am. My name is Mrs. Tiggy Winkle, and oh, yes, if you please, I'm an excellent clear starcher." And she took something out of a clothes basket and spread it on the ironing blanket. "What's that thing?" said Lucy. "That's not my pocket handkin." "Oh, no, if you please, ma'am. That's a little scarlet waistcoat belonging to Cock Robin." And she ironed it and folded it and put it on one side. Then she took something else off a clothes horse. "Isn't that my penny?" "That isn't my penny," said Lucy. "Oh, no, if you please. That's a damask tablecloth belonging to Jenny Wren. Look how it's stained with currant wine. It's very bad to wash," said Mrs. Tiggy Winkle. Mrs. Tiggy Winkle's nose went sniffle, sniffle, snuffle, and her eyes went twinkle, twinkle, and she fetched another hot iron from the fire. "There's one of my pocket handpins," cried Lucy, "and there's my penny." Mrs. Tiggy Winkle ironed it and offered it and shook out the frills. "Oh, that is lovely," said Lucy. "And what are those long yellow things with fingers like gloves?" So it sounds like Mrs. Tiggy Winkle does laundry and ironing for people. There she is with one of the things. There she is ironing away while Lucy watches. She's hanging things up neatly, gathering more items. So that must be how Mrs. Tiggy Winkle makes her living. So the long pair of things with that looks like fingers. She says, "Oh, that's a pair of stockings belonging to Sally Honeypenny. Look how she's worn the heels out with scratching in the yard. She'll very soon go barefoot," said Mrs. Tiggy Winkle. Well, you can imagine that a chicken's stockings would be long and their feet have almost like fingers on them. So their socks wouldn't be round. They would have the long fingers for their feet. "Why, there's another handkersniff, but it isn't mine. It's red." "Oh, no, if you please, ma'am. That one belongs to old Mrs. Rabbit, and it did so smell of onions. I've had to wash it separately. I can't get out the smell." "There's another one of mine," said Lucy. "What are those funny little white things?" "Oh, that's a pair of mittens belonging to Tabby Kitten. I only have to iron them. She washes them herself." Remember, the little Tabby Kitten was washing her white paws. "And there's my last pocket handkerchief," said Lucy. So apparently Mrs. Tiggy Winkle is collecting her handkerchiefs when she loses them. See, those are socks. They look kind of like gloves, but those are socks for the chicken. And there's something else. And there's a laundry basket. "And what are you dipping into the basin of starch?" "They're little dicky shirt fronts belonging to Tom Titmouse. Most terrible particular," said Mrs. Tiggy Winkle. "Now I've finished my ironing, I'm going to air some clothes." "What are these dear, soft, fluffy things?" said Lucy. "Oh, those are woolly coats belonging to the little lambs." "Will their jackets take off?" asked Lucy. "Oh, yes, if you please, ma'am. Look at the sheep mark on the shoulder, and here's one marked." and 3 that come from Littletown. They're always marked at washing. It means that they've put their names on them so that they don't get them confused. But you know, sheep, you can shave their skin, their fur off without hurting them. And that's what she's talking about. She's washing their nice little lamb's fur. There she is dipping things in the bowl, and there's the fluffy lamb's fur, see, that they're holding. So she just helps all of the farmyard and woodland animals stay nice and clean and bright. And she hung up all sorts and sizes of clothes, small brown coats of mice, and one velvety black moleskin waistcoat, and a red tailcoat with no tail belonging to Squirrel Nutkin. If you've looked at the other stories, you remember that Squirrel Nutkin lost his tail by being a very naughty guy. And a very much shrunk blue jacket belonging to Peter Rabbit. Remember, Peter Rabbit lost his jacket in Mr. McGregor's garden. He probably got shrunk being out in the weather. And a petticoat, not marked, that had gone lost in the washing, and at last the basket was empty. Then Mrs. Tiggy Winkle made tea, a cup for herself and a cup for Lucy. They sat before the fire on a bench and looked sideways at one another. Mrs. Tiggy Winkle's hand holding the teacup was very, very brown and very, very wrinkly with the soap suds, and all through her gown and cap there were hairpins sticking wrong end out, so that Lucy didn't like to sit too near her. Well, they aren't really hairpins. She's got prickles all over because she's a hedgehog, and so that's her fur. When they had finished tea, they tied up the clothes in bundles, and Lucy's pocket handkerchiefs were folded up inside her clean kitty and fastened with a silver safety pin. And then they made up the fire with turf and came out and locked the door and hid the key under the doorsill. Then away down the hill trotted Lucy and Mrs. Tiggy Winkle with the bundles of clothes. All the way down the path little animals came out of the fern to meet them. The very first that they met were Peter Rabbit and Benjamin Bunny, and she gave them their nice clean clothes, and all the little animals and birds were so much obliged to dear Mrs. Tiggy Winkle, so that at the bottom of the hill when they came to the stile, there was nothing left to carry except Lucy's one little bundle. All sorts of pictures here. There she is, hanging everything up neatly. There they are having their tea. There, if you look at her real close, see how all the things stick out of her clothes and her bonnets? Those are the prickles that are on a hedgehog. Here they go. They're hiding the key and they're going off to deliver all the clean things to all the different animals. Lucy scrambled up the stile with the bundle in her hand, and then she turned to say good night and to thank the washerwoman. But what a very odd thing! Mrs. Tiggy Winkle had not waited either for thanks or for the washing bill. She was running, running, running up the hill, and where was her white frilled cap and her shawl and her gown and her petticoat? And how small she had grown, and how brown and covered with prickles! Why, Mrs. Tiggy Winkle was nothing but a hedgehog. Now, some people say that little Lucy had been asleep upon the stile, but then how could she have found 3 clean pocket handpins and a penny pinned with a silver safety pin? And besides, I have seen the door into the back of the hill called Cat Bells. And besides, I am very well acquainted with dear Mrs. Tiggy Winkle. So what do you think? Did she dream it? Or did Mrs. Tiggy Winkle really exist? There's Lucy left at the stile. There's a little fat hedgehog running away. It's kind of a mystery, and that's the end.